This meeting is called to order, and we'll have our invocation by Pastor Meyer from Faith Vieira Lutheran. Please stand.
If I can. I'm going to read it today, okay? Let's pray. Almighty God, we invoke your presence here this day. As discussions and decisions are made which have impact for years to come, give wisdom and guidance to our representatives. You have made and given us the beautiful world we live in. May the plans discussed today for a proper stewardship of the Indian River Lagoon be carried out so that future generations may enjoy this special place. Be with the board as they struggle in the coming days with implementing the marijuana amendment. Whatever personal feelings there are, may they take seriously their responsibilities to carry out our laws with integrity and compassion. O Lord, we know that 99% of the agenda items will be unknown to 99% of Brevard County residents, yet they are still important for the well-being of us all. Give them a spirit of being servants to and for the people, whether that agenda item is obscure, shows up in the daily papers, or in the national news. All this we ask in your strong name. Amen.
Amen.
Please follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I want to welcome everybody to the Brevard County meeting on this, the 23rd day of May, the 143rd day of the year. And I know some of you math whizzes are out there thinking, well, we've already gone through 143 days, that means we only have 222 days left. I don't think that quickly, so I have to write it down. And I would remind you that on this date in 1903, the very first successful automobile trip across the United States began in San Francisco, ending in New York. Anyone want to take a guess as to how long that trip took? Think about it. 1903. Didn't have a whole lot of roads. Certainly didn't have any interstates. Well, I'll give you a hint. It wasn't even in 1903. It was April 1st, 1904. Which, think about that. That's a long time to spend in a car. I wonder how many times that car broke down. You might also be curious to know that on this day 30 years later, Bonnie and Clyde met their demise at the hands of the law in Louisiana. And finally, on a local and lighter note, Scott Carpenter orbited the Earth 3 times in his capsule, the Aurora 7, on this day 55 years ago in 1962. And that, my friends, is your lighthearted look at the news of the yesteryear. And now we'll start the more serious business at hand for Brevard County. And I would remind you, if you have your cell phone, please turn it off or turn the ringer down. Thank you. Our first order of business is minutes for approval. Do I have a motion to approve March 9, 2017, April 11, 2017, and April 13, 2017?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Anyone wish to vote no? It passes 5-0. Now we'll move into resolutions. District 1.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Parker, the Division Vice Commander of the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary, is here with us this morning. Whereas on average of more than 700 people die each year in boating-related accidents in the U.S., approximately 71% of these are fatalities caused by drowning. Whereas the vast majority of these accidents are caused by human error or poor judgment, and not by the boat, equipment, or environmental factors. And whereas 85% of boaters who lose their lives by drowning each year would be alive today if they had worn their life jackets. And whereas today's life jackets are more comfortable, more attractive, and more wearable than styles of years past and deserve a fresh look by today's boating public. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Brevard County Board of County Commissioners does hereby proclaim May 20 through 26, 2017 as National Boating Safety Week in Brevard County. And as the season approaches, we encourage all to support the goals of North American Safe Boating Campaign and the start of the year-round effort to promote safe boating, and urge all those who boat to wear it and practice safe boating habits. Done, ordered, and adopted in this regular session, 23rd day of May, AD 2017. I so move to approve.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Anyone wish to vote no? Passes 5-0. Congratulations. Would you like to come down and give us your name and tell us a little bit about what you do and who you are?
Well, thank you, first of all, Commissioners, for recognizing this event for the Coast Guard Auxiliary and the United States Coast Guard. This is kind of our Super Bowl week. And if we could do one thing, it's to get everybody to take a boating safety class and understand how their safety equipment works and why it's there and why it's so important, especially the life jacket. That's the number one thing we could ever emphasize to anybody. There's approximately 700 of us here in the Central Florida area in Division 17. We have 5 flotillas, 3 of them here in Brevard County. You guys are blessed with some of the best waterways and best lakes and rivers in the world here. And it's interesting that you're bringing up the Indian River Lagoon, because that's near and dear to all of our hearts, and we hope we're able to improve on that situation soon. We teach public education classes. That's our number one thing we do for the United States Coast Guard to support them. And our advanced boating safety course is available at any of those flotillas I just mentioned. We teach it in the Brevard County school systems now. We're trying to get to the kids earlier and earlier, because if you can get them indoctrinated to wear their life jacket and get on their parents' case to wear their life jackets, we find it's a big improvement everywhere. It was already mentioned, the statistic, approximately 85% of the deaths, if they had just been wearing a life jacket, probably would not have died. There's just some unfortunate cases where you can't prevent it, but the number one reasons we have boating accidents is what you might expect, excess speed and inattention. Especially in today's connected world, we're finding more and more people texting on their cell phones, driving their boats at a high rate of speed, and just don't see something and hit it. The second one, of course, is use of alcohol while you're boating. We want everybody to have a good time and enjoy the water, but if you just cut back on drinking a little bit, that'd be a big help to us. And then the third one is just things people can't anticipate, collisions with another boat. Neither one's paying attention and has an accident. So thanks again for your recognition. Thanks again for your support. And if everybody just passes the word along and make sure everybody understands how important it is to wear a life jacket, we'd appreciate it. So thank you.
And I would mention also, in your safe boating courses, to reiterate what you had mentioned, you learn an awful lot about boating. I've been a boater for 50 years, and an awful lot of people have no clue that a boat is different than a car.
Oh, yeah.
And they just jump in and they think, well, I can drive a car, I can drive a boat. And they don't even know the rules of the road. And part of the reason you have collisions is because people don't know that the vessel from the right has the right of way. And people just think, well, this is my waterway and I can go and do whatever I want. And you get 2 people that are bullheaded like that and they run into each other.
And what we're seeing now, exactly to your point, is people aren't paying attention to the rules of the road. They're not staying on the right side of the channels.
They don't even know the rules.
They don't know the rules. You're right. They write a check, they can turn the key, they think they can ride a boat. So anything we can do to help with education or whatever, we're always willing to do it. We have websites and everything else, so anybody can contact us anytime. We will inspect your vessel for free. We will not write you a ticket if it's non-compliant at that time. We'll give you a chance to get it into compliance. And all that stuff is important, and people need to understand it and know it. And that 8-hour class we give about boating safety is probably the foundation for boating from then on.
And I would highly recommend it.
Yep, thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, our next resolution is Commissioner Isnardi.
Yes, can I have Phil Keschlein and Teresa Russell, please? I'll read the resolution and then you can talk a little bit.
Thank you.
This is a resolution for World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. Whereas it is the desire of the Brevard County Board of County Commissioners to raise awareness and educate others about the implications of abuse on individuals and families, and whereas federal government estimates show that more than 1 in 10 persons over the age of 60 are victims of elder abuse each year, and whereas the vast majority of the abuse, neglect, and exploitation of older Americans goes unidentified and unreported, and whereas elders who experience abuse, neglect, or self-neglect face considerably higher risks of premature death than elders who have not been mistreated, and whereas public awareness has the potential to increase the identification and reporting of elder abuse by the public, professionals, and victims, can act as a catalyst to promote education and long-term solutions, and whereas Teresa Russell, supervisor with the Florida Department of Children and Families, Adult Protective Services Facilities, an annual World Elder Abuse Awareness Day event, which serves our community with education and information provided by many agencies, including state attorney, sheriff, and chiefs of police. And whereas Teresa Russell continues to represent the Brevard Commission on Aging and has served Brevard County seniors at the annual World Elder Abuse Awareness Day event for over 7 years, and whereas the Brevard Commission on Aging, together with the Brevard County Board of County Commissioners, wishes to thank Teresa Russell for a job well done, advocating for seniors, and using every opportunity to raise awareness about important issues facing our seniors. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, does hereby proclaim June 16, 2017 as World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, done, ordered, and adopted in regular session this 23rd day of May, AD 2017. I'll make a motion to approve this proclamation.
We have a motion and a second. Anyone wish to vote no? Passes 5-0. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's my honor as Vice Chair of Commission on Aging to introduce Teresa to you. She has done a tremendous amount of work. She has her master's degree through Central Florida State, but she also has another degree that I kiddingly would say is a whirling dervish, because when she takes on something, she makes it happen and does very well with it. And she, right now, that's what you're recognizing her today for all her work with the running the big show and everything else that over at the auditorium that day. She does a tremendous amount of work in the community, and what she's about to receive is very, very well deserved. Teresa?
Thank you.
Sit.
Thank you to the Brevard County Commissioners for recognizing World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, fondly noted as the WEED. I'd like to thank the State of Florida DCF, Adult Protective Services for allowing me to focus time and energy on this event, and to further thank my Brevard Commission on Aging members for helping me sponsor and promote the event this year in our community. Most of the work that DCF and our community providers do is reactive to abuse, neglect, and exploitation. The focus of the WEED event is to be proactive. In the past 12 months, 2,028 cases have been received by the Florida Abuse Hotline in Brevard County alone for adult abuse, neglect, and exploitation. It is thought that only 10% of actual cases are reported. I would further like to thank the Board of County Commissioners for their past and continued efforts in the prevention of elder abuse and supporting programs such as the community-based organization funding under Housing and Human Services. You further the efforts of abuse, neglect, and prevention. The Meals on Wheels program alone engages 154 volunteers and is hoping to accomplish another 200. In 2016, they served 195,918 meals to people who were homebound, who could not leave their home and access food. Besides delivering the meals, the volunteers may have been the only outside contact that these seniors or disabled people have on any given day. They become the friend that stops by to check on and deliver a meal. The program not only assists people that have gone hungry, it's assisting people that knowing that the community cares about them. And is that through that help that they do not become victims of abuse and neglect and exploitation. They know somebody's coming to check on them, and the people who might be attempting to abuse, neglect, or exploit them know somebody's going to be checking on them. They know that their community supports them. Thank you again for this recognition and your time and consideration, and I hope that you're all able to visit this year at our WEED event at the Melbourne Auditorium on Friday, June 16th. Thank you.
Welcome. Chief Schulmeyer, Chief Dominguez. I'm going to read the next resolution. Whereas emergency medical professionals and volunteers provide medical care to victims in sudden, life-threatening injuries and illnesses, often under stressful conditions and in high-risk situations, to save lives. And whereas the 2017 National Emergency Medical Service Week theme, EMS Strong, Always in Service, effectively reminds us that Brevard County's residents and guests benefit daily from the knowledge, skill, and judgment of paramedics, emergency medical technicians, firefighters, educators, administrators, emergency physicians, emergency nurses, and others who encompass the emergency medical services system. And whereas emergency medical personnel must rapidly assess, manage, and effectively provide care in unpredictable situations requiring life and death judgments. And whereas Brevard County's EMS teams unselfishly serve on the front line of health care when responding to man-made and natural disasters at the local, state, and national levels. And whereas a recognition is due for the emergency medical services system for its accomplishments and contributions to improve public welfare through health care, medical transportation, injury prevention, education, disaster response, homeland security, and other initiatives that reduce health care costs and save lives. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, does hereby unanimously proclaim the week of May 21st, 2017 through May 27th as Emergency Medical Services Week. Done, ordered, and adopted in regular session this 23rd day of May 2017. I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Anyone wish to vote no? Passes 5-0. Congratulations, guys, and thank you for your service.
I just want to say, on behalf of the 450 great men and women of Brevard County Fire Rescue that are doing this job 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, thank you for recognizing us through this resolution. I'd also like to point out we are an agency that responds to over 70,000 EMS calls a year within Brevard County.
Wow.
Transport 50,000 patients a year to area hospitals with 30 ambulances. None of that can be accomplished without your continued support, giving us the needed equipment and personnel that we need to do the job. So thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Nardi has the next one.
Can we have Rose Bagwell in front, please? If you don't mind telling us a little bit about Tracey after we're done reading the resolution? Okay, great. This is a resolution recognizing the Tracey Bagwell Foundation. Whereas Tracey Lynn Bagwell was born on September 3, 1964 in Parkersburg, West Virginia, and moved to the Space Coast of Florida in March of 1965. And whereas after graduating from Merritt Island High School and the University of Central Florida, Tracey Bagwell moved back to Merritt Island to faithfully serve the state of Florida as a caseworker for the Department of Children and Families. And whereas Tracey Bagwell believed in the potential of all children, young adults, and developed a passion for ensuring their success beyond foster care and into adulthood. And whereas Tracey Bagwell's life tragically ended in 2001 while protecting children in greater good of our community. And whereas Tracey Bagwell's legacy has resulted in 15 years of charitable support through the Tracey Bagwell Caribbean Island Party, an annual live event that raises funds to help support operations at the Jimmy Smith Transitional Living Cottage and the Hacienda Girls Ranch. And whereas the Tracey Bagwell Caribbean Island Party has raised over $400,000 to help young people in Brevard County find safety, self-worth, and self-sufficiency. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, does hereby recognize and commend the Tracey Bagwell Foundation for carrying out Tracey's mission to help children grow up to be safe, healthy, and prepared for life. Done, ordered, and adopted in regular session this 23rd day of May, AD 2017. I'll make a motion to approve this resolution.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Anyone wish to vote no? Passes unanimously, 5-0. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
As the designated spokesperson, I would first like to thank you for recognizing Tracey and the work of her family to remember her legacy. 16 years ago, Tracey was murdered on Merritt Island, and this group of wonderful people decided to make the best of that and find a way to support foster kids in Brevard County in remembrance of Tracey. Children's Home Society of Florida is honored to work with the Bagwell family, run Hacienda Girls Ranch, and provide care for those girls leaving foster care after they turn 18. With that support, those girls have the opportunity to graduate high school. If they're behind in school, they have the opportunity to start college, and they just have many opportunities that they wouldn't otherwise have because of the Bagwell family. I'd like to introduce Rose Marie Bagwell and her partner Bill. I'd also like to introduce Tracey's stepmom, Susan Rush, and her sister-in-law, Katie Crabtree, and her niece, Mandy Crabtree. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I'd like to hand each of you an invitation.
Oh, great. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Okay, this next item is something that is near and dear to my heart. It's the Reciprocity Act of 2017. For those of you that aren't familiar with it or this subject, when I went to Washington last month, I spoke to Congressman Posey and Senator Rubio's staff about this, and they are both supporting it. In fact, they've both introduced bills in the respective houses. The purpose behind this act is to protect those that receive a carry permit. And my premise is that the right to drive is not a constitutional right, yet if you have a driver's license from Florida, you can drive in any state in this nation, and you're legal. If you have a carry permit for your weapon in Florida, there are only certain states, and I believe it's 17, that you're allowed to carry in those particular states. Now, in the state where I'm from, in New Jersey, I have a carry permit in Florida, but if I cross the line into New Jersey and I have that weapon with me, it doesn't even have to be on my person. It can be locked in my glove box. And I'm subject to a 5 to 10 year penalty. And that's not a maybe. There's people in many cases where people innocently announced as part of their carry permit, one in particular that I can think of, he had a carry permit from North Carolina, and he was in New Jersey to help the people after Hurricane Sandy came ashore, and he was stopped for a blinker, and the cop wasn't even giving him a ticket. It was just to warn him that his blinker was out. Well, according to the North Carolina carry permit law, anytime he has anytime he comes in contact with a legal officer, he has to announce the fact that he has a carry weapon. So he was immediately arrested, and he's still fighting that, and he could face 5 to 10 years. So I think this is important. This is a constitutional right, and if you get a carry permit in one state, I think you should be able to carry it to other states. So Senator Rubio's office and Congressman Posey's office are supporting it. It's working its way through Congress. But I thought it would be important for us as a commission to support that unanimously and just let our local legislators know that this is important to us. So I want to read this. Whereas every state in our nation recognizes the right of residents to lawfully carry a concealed handgun in public for self-defense, a right that more than 15 million Americans now exercise, and whereas America's experience with concealed carry demonstrates that the repeated anti-gun claim that concealed carry increases violence is factually incorrect. The available evidence shows that concealed carry licenses are exceptionally law-abiding. And whereas concealed carry reciprocity is already a reality in 22 states that recognizes all other concealed carry licenses or allow law-abiding non-residents to carry a firearm without a permit. So I stand corrected, it's 22 states, not 17. Whereas only 10 states still refuse to grant full faith and credit to the permits of other states, forcing legal concealed carriers to surrender their rights when traveling through these jurisdictions. And whereas the consequence is obvious, as otherwise law-abiding citizens, including veterans, a single mother, a disaster response worker, a nurse, a medical student, and even a corrections officer have become accidental criminals and suffered seizure of property, arrest, detention, and even prosecution because they failed to navigate the legal minefield that is the current state reciprocity system. Whereas House Rule 38 and State Bill 446, Concealed Carry Reciprocity Act of 2017, would eliminate the confusing patchwork of state carry laws by allowing individuals who possess concealed carry permits from their home state or who are not prohibited from carrying concealed in their home state to exercise those rights in any other state that does not prohibit concealed carry. Whereas House Rule 38 is co-sponsored in the House of Representatives by the Honorable Congressman Bill Posey, and Senate Bill 446 is co-sponsored in the Senate by the Honorable Senator Marco Rubio. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida does hereby support the passage of the Concealed Carry Reciprocity Act of 2017 and call on all members of Congress to adopt this excellent act. Done, ordered, and adopted in regular session this 23rd day of May 2017. I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Anyone wish to vote no? Passes 5-0.
I'm glad I didn't have that word in my resolution.
Okay, moving right along. Commissioner Isnardi.
Yes, this is a presentation by the Tropicana speech contest winners. So if we can have Gavin Schumacher. And what the Gavin Schumacher is the 4th and 5th grade winner. And Madison Herndon, this is the 6th grade winner, and she'll be speaking next. But they're gonna give their speech to us, and I can't wait.
Come on, guys. You can come up too.
Come on up, don't be scared.
And this is part of the 4-H Tropicana's public speaking program. Did you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Thanks. Good morning. My name is Andrea Lazari. I am the University of Florida IFAS Brevard County Extension 4-H agent. Big title. I have Gus Kerner with me today. He's one of our fabulous, amazing 4-H program assistants, and he'll tell you a little bit more about Tropicana. But first, 4-H provides educational and enrichment opportunities to youth ages 5 to 18, just like these guys right here behind me. And we do that through clubs, so community clubs that focus on things like horses, gardening, public speaking, archery, and so much more, as well as our in-school and after-school enrichment and day camps. And what we are trying to do is provide life skills and educational opportunities to these kids so that they can become responsible and productive citizens of our community as they grow up. And so one of those big programs that we do in school is the 4-H Tropicana Public Speaking Contest, and Gus will tell you a little bit more about that.
Good morning, Commissioners. The Tropicana 4-H Public Speaking Contest gives youth in the 4th, 5th, and 6th grade an opportunity to practice their public speaking skills. Did you know that public speaking is people's greatest fear, more so than snakes and spiders? And youth a lot of times will choose careers and educational tracks based on the fact whether they have to public speak or not public speak. And so this curriculum is built into Brevard or Florida public schools, and 4-H gives youth an opportunity to present the finalists here today. I'd first like to introduce Gavin Schumacher of Surfside Elementary. He will be giving his speech entitled B24. Go ahead,
Gavin, can you come over here and we'll lower the mic for you? Excellent.
Boom, boom, boom. What's that sound, you ask me? That's the sound of the B-24, earning us freedom and victory. The B-24 is a ruthless and amazing bomber plane. Its top speed is 290 miles per hour. Its fuel capacity is 3,614 gallons, and its wingspan is 110 feet. It's also a heavy, strong, and loud freedom fighter. The B-24 was used during World War II by the U.S. and British Air Forces. Did you know that the first prototype flew in December 1939, and by the spring of 1941, B-24s were being delivered to the British Royal Air Forces on a cash and carry basis, which means they give you the cash and you give them the airplane. Out of all the B-24's crewmen, they killed about 2,600 enemy planes. So if that means there's about 400 kids at my school, that would be 6.5 schools worth of planes shot down. It's a lot of planes. The B-24 originated in a 1938 request by the Air Corps for Consolidated Aircraft to produce B-17s. In fact, there are many types of B-24s. There's the B-24J, B-24L, B-24D, and many more versions with little tweaks to make each one unique. The armament for the B-24, the bomb bay could accommodate up to 8 1,600-pound bombs. The late Model Ds included 11 50-caliber machine guns, 3 in the nose turret, 2 in the belly turret, 2 in the tail turret, 2 in the dorsal turret just aft of the cockpit, and 2 in the waist. My great-grandpa flew a B-24 in World War II and completed many successful missions. Unfortunately, he and his crew got shot down. After parachute landing, one of the crewmen injured his ankle. Thankfully, they escaped with the help of the German resistance. I'm glad that he wrote his story so I could learn what he did as a pilot on the one and only B-24. Next time you hear or see a B-24, you'll appreciate what it's done for our country.
Thank you, Gavin.
Next, I'd like to introduce Madison Herndon of Port Malabar Elementary. She'll be presenting her speech, Contagiousness of Smiling.
I'm just going to apologize for my voice. Allergies hitting the worst possible week. Sure, everyone has heard of smiling being contagious, but did you know that's actually true? When people smile, it spreads across the room. People feed off of others smiling because of our ancestors' evolution, and also because it is good for our body. Therefore, your brain supports it. Hundreds of years ago, our ancestors, cavemen, lived in a small family group, such as a tribe. They fed off each other's emotions to help them survive. For example, if one Neanderthal was frightened by something, the other tribe member would see that Neanderthal and would reflect the same expression. The snowball effect would continue until the entire group realized the danger. Since this is a beneficial trait, it stayed in our genes for generations to come. As you most likely know, no data is correct 100% of the time. The disease of smiling has been tested, and the results are astounding. The Kelly-Jones hospitality test indicates people do usually respond to each other with a smile. However, if the subjects are within close proximity, the responding smile occurs within a millisecond. There are few things that move as quickly as that. Our brain, the most intricate supercomputer ever created, is burdened with one of the most complicated tasks, keeping us alive. In addition to keeping us alive, it also has to keep us healthy. Were you aware that smiling releases hormones like dopamine, and that those hormones not only make you happy, but cleanse you and help your body perform necessary tasks? If your brain is trying to keep you healthy, and smiling is making you healthy, seeing a smile should make you smile too, right? The brain is a very logical thing, most of the time, and it is very logical to want to be healthy. But your mind needs a trigger, and that someone else being glad is your trigger for smiling. While this is one of the few diseases that doesn't need a cure, it is still important. We use the spreading of facial expressions as a survival habit. Now, we use it to create healthy and welcoming environments. Go ahead, smile now. Isn't that much better? Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Madison.
Thank you, Commissioners, for your time this morning and your support of the 4-H programming. This is just 2 of the 650 Brevard County youth that participated in this program, and programs like this develop our future leaders and business owners and educated students. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for all the work you do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. You're not giving them a resolution? No. Okay. Commissioner Barfield.
Could I have Chief Schulmeyer please come up? This is for National Beach Safety Week and Rip Current Awareness Week, and really appreciate all you all do. I mean, especially coming up on the summer too, with a lot of people. I'll go ahead and read the resolution. Whereas Brevard County is home to some of the world's most beautiful and accessible beaches, and whereas Brevard County beaches represent a world-renowned recreational resource, and whereas Brevard County residents, tourists, and visitors alike are drawn to our beaches by the millions each year for water and beach activities, and whereas the aquatic environment has dangers that can be effectively managed through public awareness and the vigilance of Brevard County's highly skilled, dedicated, and motivated ocean rescue, and whereas during the season year of 2016, Brevard County Ocean Rescue allowed for the successful execution of 107 major medical aids, 74,087 preventative assists, and 649 aquatic rescues, saving the lives of numerous tourists, visitors, and Brevard County residents. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of County Commissioners, Brevard County, Florida, does hereby proclaim the week of May 22nd through May 29th, 2017, National Beach Safety Week and Rip Current Awareness Week, done, ordered, and adopted in regular session this 23rd day of May 2017. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we accept this resolution.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Anyone wish to vote no? Passes 5-0. All right. Congratulations.
So on behalf of myself and Brevard County Ocean Rescue, as we transition from spring into summer, some of our busiest beach weather season, the National Beach Safety Week and Rip Current Awareness Week reminds us to remind our beach patrons to never swim alone, always swim near a lifeguard, and be aware of rip currents and learn how to swim. So I want to thank you very much. The second thing is now the B-24 is now my favorite bomber after that speech. So I appreciate that. So thank you very much.
We're happy to know that. Moving to the consent agenda. Do we have any items that we wish to pull? You're pulling 2D9? No?
That's
Yeah. You want to pull one?
Yes.
Which one?
Mr. Chair, can I please pull 2B6 and 2C3?
And 2D? What was the second one?
2B6.
2B6.
And 2C3, please, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
You are pulling 2D9 because the card's right.
Yeah, and we're going to pull 2D9 because we have a comment card. And I would like to just give a shout out to Jim Leisenfeld and his staff for 2B7. This is one of those items that really kind of goes unheralded, but it points out how hard our staff works to do their job, and in this case, save us a lot of money. There was a grant that was available that I believe it was Lake County passed on, and so Jim and his people just jumped right in, and they were able to take advantage of that. And how much was it? 200, 350,000, 354,000 bucks. So saved Brevard County a lot of money, and had I not mentioned it, nobody would have ever known. But that's the kind of work our staff does. So shout out to you, buddy. Okay. 2D9, let's take this in order. Let's do 2B6. Commissioner Tobias? Well, first, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. So if that's all we have, can I entertain a motion to pass the rest of the consent agenda?
So moved.
We have a motion,
Second.
and we have a second. Anyone wish to vote no? The consent agenda passes except for 2B6 and 2C3 and 2D9. Anyone wish to vote no? Passes 5-0. Okay, let's go to 2B6. Commissioner Tobias?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this is concerning a lease for the TDC. I had a few questions pertaining to the lease before we get into discussion. With the indulgence of the chair, I'd like
Sure.
to ask.
Go right ahead.
Mr. Garvey? Perfect. My question, first of all, how many visitors has the current office in Cocoa? Does it receive on an annual or a monthly basis?
At the Visitor Information Center, Commissioner, I apologize, I don't have that number with me this morning.
Okay. Thank you. I'm looking at the lease, and it looks as though it's for 6,127 square feet. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct, yes, sir.
Thank you. Running through your past square footage, it looks as though when you had 3 less FTE in 2006, prior to you being here, you were able to fulfill the functions of your duty with 2,098 square feet. So in other words, this lease would be 3 times the amount of space that you've had previously with only 3 more FTE. Can you help me understand what is the requirement for the more than 4,000 square feet for those 3 FTE?
Well, as you mentioned, I wasn't here in 2006, so I'm not sure of that configuration. I guess all I can say is that the existing office lease that we have is suitable for our needs. This request for approval allows us to stay in that space, which I felt was the more cost-effective option rather than incurring costs of relocating, finding new space, and dealing with the moving and build-out costs associated.
Thank you. Are you aware what the guidelines that county has for space requirements of offices with facilities management?
No, sir.
Neither was I, but as looking at new space, when I had an office, that's where I went to decide what would be a fair amount of space. And looking at your FTE, and the county has set up a policy. Not a policy, a guideline, I guess, is better, adding in for the different type of FTE, filing space, copiers, corridors, and all that stuff. Would you be surprised that with your FTE, the county would make a recommendation of square footage for your facility being between 937 square feet and 1,162 square feet? That's about an average of 1,000, or an average of about, a little over 1,000 square feet. Now, adding for a conference room, that brings it closer to 2,000 square feet and stuff like that. So you're roughly about 3 times over the average, or not the average, the guidelines. So my question would be, what's the need for 4,000 extra square feet above the guidelines that the county has set up?
Well, I think what drove my decision to request this approval was that it's an existing office lease. We are set up in that space. It seems to be functioning well. It's not a custom build situation where we're building from scratch to that ideal or that guideline. And again, what drove my decision to request this approval to amend the lease so we could renew it and extend it is that I just didn't feel like it was prudent to incur the cost of relocating at this time. So I understand what you're saying about the space guidelines. It's just this space we've been in for 10 years. It's inherited the space, and I'm not trying to say that it's ideal to our needs. It's really a matter of trying to be as cost conscious as possible and not going into new build out or anything like that.
I'm looking at a 5-year lease that is roughly $475,000. Is that A, approximately correct, and B, could that 475, I know you guys are required for certain penny expenditures, if there wasn't that $475,000 expense occurred, could that be used on advertising, Brevard County?
If I understand your question, yeah, the allocation to administrative costs comes from all the funds that receive tourist tax pennies. So conceivably, yeah, a portion of that would come from our promotion and marketing fund to fund that portion of the administrative costs.
And finally, you mentioned that you were concerned about the moving costs. What investigation did you do when looking at other space that was in the area or potentially being on county-owned property to save taxpayers, and I know this isn't just Brevard County taxpayers, these are visitors as well, that $475,000 cost?
Well, I take all of our expenditures seriously, and our initial review of the market, and we received input from central services to find out what was available in county facilities or in the general area where we are currently located, and there didn't appear to be any suitable options, so we didn't pursue that. I did not get specific price estimates on moving, but just knowing the costs associated with that, I just felt like this was the best option, and so we focused on this renewal.
Thank you. And when you say suitable, did you ask for roughly 6,000 square feet, or did you ask for the policy guide or the guidelines of roughly what your organization of approximately 2,000 square feet would need if it fell within reasonable parameters?
That I relied on my finance director working with central services to get that information, so I didn't make that specific request as you described.
Mr. Chair, I've got no further questions, but I'd certainly like to close on this if we don't have any other questions.
Okay, so you want to move on?
I didn't know if anyone else has any questions or comments.
Pleasure of the board. Mr. Abate?
The one comment, in this particular lease, did you not give up some space? Actually, you reduced the space because you had storage, which was part of the prior lease,
Yes,
that
sir.
you've now eliminated in the same lease agreement?
Yes, sir. We modified the lease to eliminate a fair amount of storage space that we had currently, and we pulled that back into the envelope of these 2 suites that are described in this lease, just in order to be as cost efficient as possible.
Okay, so those are the steps that you did take for this.
Commissioner Pritchett?
It's not on.
Works better when it's on.
I had an opportunity to go down there and visit over the last few weeks, and it seems like it's right in the middle of the downtown area, so it looks like a good location. My request would be, Mr. Garvey, because I know you kind of inherited that, it is a good location, it's a nice building, but as good directors would, if you would just continue the search as we move forward, always, which I'm sure you're doing for better locations and all those things, I would be confident in that. But as far as space amount, I think it's more imperative that you're getting the best bang for your buck of what you're being able to do with your project. So that means more to me than all those other things. But I'm thankful you found an ability how to give up some space and some cost. And I would encourage you to, as we move forward, that you continue to do that.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Commissioner Nardi?
Again, I would just echo what Commissioner Pritchett said about keeping your eyes out for a better deal, because my concern is the location. If you're downtown Cocoa, I mean, are you really getting the visitors that you could get somewhere else? And the amount of square feet that you have, I know you may get visitors specific to that area for people that are traveling there, but is that really the best option for what your intention is for that for what you're doing in that office? So I'd like to see those visitors numbers over a period of time. I know the penalty, I believe, I don't have my computer because I managed to lock it in my vehicle this morning, but I know I'd written down some information. I think it was like $80,000 roughly to break that lease over the 2 year, if you broke it in 2 years, or if you opted to get out of the lease in 2 years.
Yes, we worked in an ability to cancel the lease after 2 years.
But the penalty was pretty stiff.
It starts at a point and then goes down. So
Right.
I felt like that gives us the flexibility, should we find a more suitable location that we feel like justifies the expense of moving, we can
And I
do
wouldn't
that.
want that to be a deterrent for you to still look for it, because if overall, if in 2 years you find something, and even with that penalty, it's still comparable, and looking again into the future, I'd like that option.
Sure.
Hearing no further comments, do we have...
I'd like to close on it,
Sure.
if that's okay. Mr. Chair, I would ask that we send this back. The director clearly has not done outside research looking for alternative sites. The justification was merely that the cost of moving would be more expensive. On looking at the agenda report, it says clearly this provides visitor information center, but when questioned, we don't know exactly how many visitors this facility gets. It was clearly stated that there were none at the county land, but is this a justification of more than almost $500,000 for that expense that was not incurred, to the best of my knowledge, when they were on county facilities? So I believe the 6,000 square feet is absolutely ridiculous, and if any of us asked for an office space of 6,000 square feet, we would be met with a similar type of rebuke. So it would be my suggestion, and remember, this is a long-term lease, so it's not something that we can say continue to investigate. This is something that we would be obligated to enter into that will, again, be almost, the last few years, it's a $99,991.89 lease. So kudos for getting rid of the $200 or $300 a month storage space, but quite frankly, you shouldn't have needed it in the first place when you have 6,100 square feet for 12 or total of, 14 FTE. So it would be my hope that I get support from the board that we would get some alternative leases, so we could look at, using the savings to advertise Brevard County instead of having an egregious amount of floor space for a facility that we don't know gets us any tourist traffic.
Chair recognizes Commissioner Barfield.
Mr. Garvey, how much has our tourism increased over the last couple of years?
Well, we saw last fiscal year, tourist tax collection increased 14%, and that's over 12% for the previous year. Just a couple of other points. The tourist information function in downtown Cocoa Village does serve a growing port-of-call activity, where cruise ships make a port-of-call in Port Canaveral, and they actually bring guests into the downtown Cocoa Village area for a tourism activity. So we feel like the space there does serve a certain purpose of welcoming those guests. We also have a fairly large conference room that accommodates committee meetings. The TDC has 5 standing committees, and we were able to host those committees for the most part in that conference room, saving us some meeting costs if we had to do those in satellite locations. So I understand completely the concern over cost of office space. I just think that this does function well for us. It is a fair rate, and I just would ask that you approve this amendment so we can continue to operate in that location.
I tell you, if you go down Cocoa Village during the week, actually weekends too, you'll see the buses coming through there. They're all coming from the port. And now with the mega ships they have, there's a lot more coming through there. It's a major element there because that's also where the visitor center is there. All the other activities are based out of there where people can see what they are, and they do take advantage of them. I think it's in the right place. It's at the right time. We're growing in tourism. So, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we go ahead and approve this amendment to the office lease agreement.
We have a motion on the floor to approve this item. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any other conversation on the subject? Hearing none. All those in favor, vote aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Passes 4-1. Mr. Tobias, you want to tackle C3?
Sure, Mr. Chair. Thank you. And this was with a mulching contract that the county had, again, for clarification. My question would be, with the indulgence of the chair, to the county attorney, is if this was a breach of contract.
I haven't looked at that issue, so I need some time to study it.
Okay. So,
A follow-up. When did this alleged breach of I'm just trying to figure out this, we've made, there were $60,000 of additional costs or actual damages potentially that the county incurred. This contract was awarded way back in June 2015. It's, to the best of my knowledge, it's been at least a couple months since we were made aware of I guess the Jimmy Crowder contract not being able to meet the needs. Why hasn't the county looked at potentially a breach of contract in this environment?
I think Mr. Rodriguez would probably answer that better than I could.
Commissioner, generally when this type of situation happens with the vendor, one of my first concerns is to get the thing operating smoothly like it was before. We had several issues with Jimmy Crowder, as you can see in the agenda report, breakdowns of equipment and so forth. We had numerous conversations with them. The majority of these breakdowns and building up of the existing yardway seem to occur in one specific site. Bottom line is, I think they chewed more than they bit more than they could chew.
And Mr. Rodriguez, I appreciate it, and I think you did a darn good job. And had I been in the circumstance that you're in, I most likely would have done the same thing. But my understanding is you're not an attorney, and a breach of contract is outside of your scope of duty. So let me say you've done a wonderful job given your skill set, and I greatly appreciate that. But this goes back to the legal department, of which, to the best of my knowledge, we have 9 attorneys, and we have not investigated whether or not, because of the issues that you brought up, I assume you informed the correct people that Mr. Crowder was not able to fulfill the contract. So we could potentially looking at covering my math, more than $60,000 extra dollars that we had to expend in order to go with the second choice. So again, thank you for what you did, but this goes back to the legal aspect and the breach of contract. And I just wonder, when we've had months to look at this, or when the legal department has had months to look at this, and we don't have a determination as to whether or not, in fact, it was a breach of contract, are we doing our job?
Did Christine take a look at this?
No, sir, we concentrated on solving the problem and not the legal aspect of it, since the contractor continued to work for us and they have a surety bond of some sort still existing in the system.
So in short, we never get to see it at the legal department.
Excuse me?
We weren't aware of the issue with the legal department.
No, sir, I did not pass it on to the legal department. Like I said, we concentrated on solving the issue.
Mr. Knox, would you like us to table this issue so you can look into
Well, if
this?
the commissioner's asking us to determine whether or not there's been a contract breach, I think we probably ought to take a look at it.
Okay, so Chair recognizes Commissioner Pritchett.
I think even if we do that, but I think he's going to still need to move ahead with this consolidated resource company to go ahead and do this. I think we should go ahead and approve it regardless and maybe do some investigation. Question, sir, do you think they bid it on something they couldn't do, or do you think they underbid it and they weren't able to do it financially? Are you allowed to give that information now, or?
My understanding of it is they probably had the sufficient hardware to do it. They had some parolees working for them, and I think that aggravated the problem. Also, that every month they had to go back to Tallahassee to see their probation officers while they were out. Of course, no work was being done. The majority of the problems occurred in the maintenance of the hardware, and to the point where we had one raccoon go into the engine and pretty much tear up all the wiring on it. Again, they might have bidded something that they weren't capable of producing.
Okay.
And with the hurricane coming along, the yard waste just got worse and worse and worse, and they weren't able to step up to the plate.
I would like to make a motion, go ahead and approve this with Mr. Knox being able to look into the prospect of recovering in some type of legality if it's possible.
Could we also ask, so this miscommunication doesn't happen in the future, so if there is an issue like this and there is an existing contract, that we get it in the hands of the legal department to investigate what remedies we do have, so it doesn't end up just in one department as opposed to getting it to the right department?
Absolutely. We'll make sure that this doesn't occur again.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Commissioner Barfield, you have the floor.
That's okay.
Okay, you'll pass. We have a motion to accept this with the provisions provided. We have a second by Commissioner Isnardi. Any other discussion? All those in favor, vote aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0. Okay, and D9. Wendy Ellis.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you, Commissioners, County Manager, and County Attorney for the opportunity to address the agenda item you have before you. I'm Wendy Ellis, a Merritt Island resident and a 25-year Brevard County business owner. I was appointed to the Merritt Island Redevelopment Agency in 2015, and I want to personally thank you for the confidence you have in me as the agency chairman. I also wanted to thank the County Commission for unanimously reappointing 3 Myra board members at your meeting on January 10th of 2017. Your unanimous vote continue to promote the success of the agency, as my fellow board members come with a wealth of business, construction, engineering, and entrepreneur experience. Marcus Herman, a lifetime Merritt Island resident and owner of 2 very successful auto repair shops for over 30 years on Merritt Island, has served as a volunteer, Myra board member, and beautification committee member for the past 12 years. His dedication has led to the successful facade improvement program, a summary of which I would like to provide to you now. We had actually provided this document to Commissioner Tobias at his request, and we wanted to provide it to the rest of the commissioners as well. We are so proud of this document because it verifies an average ratio of a 6-to-1 return on your investment during the last 10 years, and this year we're currently at a ratio of 7.6%. This document also indicates the increase in property values that occurs when blighted properties are improved. Please note the high return on investment this program has generated and continues to generate for Brevard County. I also wanted to thank you for giving us the opportunity to present the Merritt Island Redevelopment Agency Economic Impact Study at your recent CRA workshop. Highly respected economist Al Vasquez, the same professional that evaluated the impact of the Indian River Lagoon for the County Commission, pointed out in the Merritt Island Redevelopment Agency Economic Impact Study that during the last 10 years, the county CRA has reinvested 97% of tax increment funds it receives in construction, capital renovations, land, grants, and aid, totaling $10.7 million. Only 3% of our budget has gone to overhead. Mr. Vasquez noted that Myra was even more efficient than the highly esteemed Red Cross with an overhead of 91%, or with an overhead of, with an overhead of 9%. All this was accomplished with no debt. During the last 10 years, unincorporated Merritt Island has collected a total of $421 million in sales tax and $541 million in property taxes. Unincorporated Merritt Island ranks third in property tax and sales contributions to Brevard County, as compared to having 6% of the area and 8% of the population. According to Mr. Vasquez, the Merritt Island reinvestment sustains the Merritt Island tax contribution with an 86-to-1 benefit-to-cost ratio. Myra has proven to be an economic engine for Merritt Island businesses and for tax collections for Brevard County. I want to thank your chairman, Commissioner Smith, for your leadership on CRA accountability and the discussion you entered into with us regarding a sooner-than-later ending date. Myra is committed to your goals, Mr. Chairman, that create a long-term comprehensive business plan using Board of County Commission approved master plan for Merritt Island. We're committed to phasing the plan in 5, 10, and 15-year increments, developing costs for planned projects, estimating how long the comprehensive long-term plan will take to complete, sunsetting the agency when the plan is completed, and amending the board-approved master plan for Board of County Commission ratification with the above terms. The Merritt Island Redevelopment Agency has agreed to facilitate this process and commit to no debt without County Commission approval until the agency end date. It's been my privilege to serve, and I hope to continue to serve as your appointment to the Merritt Island Redevelopment Agency Board. It's my request that the board allow both myself and the other hardworking volunteer professional board members to continue their work on your behalf. The economic impact study shows that the Merritt Island Redevelopment Agency is a lean, hardworking machine and a true economic engine to Brevard County. Thank you again for your time.
Wendy, when is the end date that you guys are working under? Is that 2042?
That's currently the end date, yes.
Okay. Any other questions for Wendy? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman.
Pleasure of the board. First, I'd like to know, how did this wind up on consent? It would seem to me that something of this import should have its own item. Does anybody have an answer for me? How did it wind up on consent?
There was it was a commission's submittal to our office, and we forwarded it as submitted.
And who was the commissioner that forwarded it?
I believe it was Commissioner Tobias' office.
Okay. Yeah, it seems to me that this deserves a lot more input than just being put on a consent agenda. Mr. Barfield?
Yeah, this is a governance, change in governance, basically. Let's just don't sugarcoat this. This is a whole move to get rid of Myra, to get rid of CRAs. And Myra has been very successful in working infrastructure over the years. A lot of different things have happened just because of the matching funds and things that we can get done. This is it's not broken. This is the way it's worked before. We aren't. I mean, seriously, we're going to let the county commission be the board of this. That makes no sense when I'm the one that lives in Merritt Island. We have the system in place according to the ordinance where we appoint committee members, board members, just like we do every other one. The board approves it, and it works fine. And these board members are, just as Ms. Ellis said, are local people. They're small business people. They're the ones, and this is a small business in the business district. This is not a residential CRA. So it is very successful in what it does, and there is no reason to make these changes. And so I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we rescind this or do not accept this amended ordinance.
A second.
Mr. Chair,
Okay, we have a motion and a second and discussion. We have Commissioner Pritchett.
Yeah, it's no secret, I'm a great advocate of home rule. And I think
I
anytime.
think the motion's on the floor, so either we take the motion or we continue with debate. So, Mr. Chair, which one is it?
We've accepted the motion, we have a second, and now we're in conversation. And Ms. Pritchett has her light lit. If you wish to speak, you can push your button also. Continue.
I believe in
Excuse
home.
the interruption.
It's all right. I believe in home rule. So I think anytime we can get government into the hands of the residents, it's always better. The same way I would hate Tallahassee deciding the county commission doesn't have any business deciding for this county. So I think when we're talking money funds in a community, I think it's important to do that. Now, I did see Commissioner Barfield brought up some informational items that we're going to be talking about with Myra as far as some structure, which I thought was very progressive and some good ideas. That probably needs to be conversation soon with him of how to construct that. I think up here as a commission, since we have these, we should be working on each of the districts and finding ways to keep funding locally in District 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 to benefit the communities in those areas to keep blight out so that we can keep the economy flowing through the county. So I would encourage that with each of the districts to move forward with that as we're doing that, trying to meet budgets. But I think Myra's doing a good job, and I think it's got very capable people running it. And I don't think the county commission could do a better job than what you're doing currently. So thank you, and we do approve your positions, and you're very qualified.
Chair recognizes Commissioner Isnardi.
And I am not opposed at all myself, and I think I made that clear before we discussed this briefly, to having members of the business community on that board, not at all. What I thought was a fair compromise, at least given the ordinance we had in place, was that the Myra board be appointed by the county commissioners, each with our own appointment. I myself sit on the CRA board in West Melbourne because that's my district. So maybe that's the halfway mark. I have no desire to get rid of Myra. I have no desire to rip apart the board or what they're doing there, because you are doing a lot of really good things. But I also understand, and we would be lying if we would say that there's not been controversy in the past, in the recent past, as a matter of fact. So I think in order to have accountability, either we do one of two things. We either change the ordinance to reflect that Commissioner 2 in District 2 is the only commissioner that appoints all of the members, or we each get our own appointment of business owners and the like within that district of Merritt Island. And the reason why I would lean more toward that is because as a board, it is the county. It is county property. We are the county commission. We are responsible ultimately for the county. And I would make, at least the proposal that maybe the commissioner in District 2 sit on that board, just as I do in West Melbourne, because it works. And that's, to me, a fair compromise, because it would still have to come back to the board for approval. The board members would still apply to the board, or we would bring our own appointment, but they would still meet the requirements of the board. But that way, it would eliminate that mini government that we have there that is only governed by one district, because it is county area, and we are a county commission, and we have to, as much as we try to take care of each of our own districts, we have to recognize that we are a collective and we are for the benefit of the whole. So that's just my input.
Commissioners Tobias?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to be clear that this is just permission to advertise. That's first of all the agenda item does. Second of all, this doesn't interrupt anything that Myra is currently doing. This is just about the Brevard County Commission taking the responsibility the voters did is to make decisions on where county resources go. We gave some directive to the county manager about some interlocal agreements and some guidelines for interlocal agreements that we hope that he would be able to negotiate on our behalf with the CRAs, and I think that was a great start. However, this one is void of an interlocal agreement because this is a county CRA. So if we are really concerned about responsibility and financial policies, Brevard County Commission will take this and make the decisions instead of handing that responsibility and those resources off to people that, looking at the list, were not elected. And most importantly, and let me tell you most importantly why I did this, and you saw that the opponents run out there very, very quickly that this is horrible and this needs to be taken off the agenda, is because what my ordinance does is bring sunshine to the board to this Merritt Island redevelopment. They're not televised. They're not available online. If you look at many of the other CRAs, you have the ability as electorate to watch on your computer, watch on YouTube. I've got a list. Myra, with over $1 million of TIF funds, it's not available. So if Brevard County Commission was to take over Myra, and this does not shut down Myra, this says that the $1 million is the responsibility of the Commission, we put it in the sunshine. We are able to get this information out not only to the people in Merritt Island, but all across Brevard County. So understand that this is nothing to do with interrupting any of the functions of Myra, and you know, we can discuss Myra and the issues there, but I think that would be best done with us as a board, seeing as we are the governing body of this particular CRA. So I would ask for your support if you're in favor of sunshine and transparency, but I completely understand if you would like to keep this under the cover of night, as there is no availability for people to access what goes on at these board meetings, either on Space Coast Government TV or online, which most of the other CRAs, though I may not agree with how they expend their money, at least they do it in sunshine. Merritt Island does not. So that's all this ordinance does. Allow us to advertise and then have those discussions, which I assume would not be on consent should it come back with a favorable response to advertise.
Commissioner Barfield.
Wow, that's some of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard. Everything is on sunshine done by Myra. It's advertised. The minutes are available. All of that's out there. And you know what? The budget is approved by this board. So I don't understand where you're getting your information, but the thing is, all this is in sunshine. It has to be. And as far as talking about how we go about selecting the different board members, this is the way it happens. It's perfectly normal for me to put nominations in, and the board go ahead and elect them. You can disagree with them, and that's fine. We bring that up. But seriously, and I don't appreciate someone saying that there's been chaos or whatever within Myra, because it hasn't. In fact, when there's an issue, a personnel issue, and a personnel is not doing their job, that person doesn't do that job anymore. Just like I run my business, just like Mr. Smith runs his, if someone doesn't do their job, well, then we need to find somebody else to do it. And so if that's chaos, that's chaos. But anyway, so this is all getting really ridiculous. The point is this is all about a change to the ordinance, and I have a motion on the floor, and I call the question.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor, but I have two more lights. Do you want to hear from them or no? You want to vote on it as is?
Just want to vote.
Okay. We have a point of question. All those in favor of rejecting this resolution, vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
No.
Passes 3-2. And it's an hour and 24 minutes into the meeting. We're not even out of consent yet.
Commissioner, can I have one point,
Sure.
if I may?
Mr. Abate?
Yeah. What I'd like to know is, I want to make sure we are following the board's intent and direction in the future. And as this item was an item for legislative intent and permission to advertise, and that was another basis for it being on the consent. In the future, is the board's preference that we not place items that are legislative intent and permission to advertise on consent? Because actually, we passed another one today that went through 2C6, was similar in that it was a request for legislative intent and permission to advertise. So we want to make sure that in the future, we as staff are following board direction.
I have a suggestion.
Sure.
The county manager meet with the chair and make that determination.
Yeah, that would work. Commissioner Isnardi has the floor.
And again, I mean, if, you know, and I know Commissioner Barfield wasn't trying to quiet the conversation, and I would never say that, but if I had a chance to talk, I would have said, you know, since this was just legislative intent, and since I was looking for another possible alternative, you know, ultimately I was forced to vote on it, but I would like to see that come back. And whether whether this board's desire is to allow the commissioner in District 2 to appoint all members, that is fine. I just want the ordinance clarified. Of course, I would prefer it to, prefer it that we all get an appointment, but that's something we can discuss at a later date. But as the ordinance reads now, it just says that the commission approves it. There's no details on there who brings the appointments. And so if we're not going to have that, if we're not going to go that route, then we need to probably have some clarification
Sure,
there.
we can revisit that. Commissioner Tabaya has the floor.
Okay. I can put my button.
No, and maybe we need to investigate a policy for, the county manager as we move forward in order to do this, because when I put this forward, I sent this, and I'm just happy it ends up on the agenda. I certainly did not mean to sneak it in there. I know my office spends a great deal of time going over the full agenda, whether it's consent or not, but I respect the other commissioners that, may not do their due diligence in order to spend the time with a consent agenda, and I don't think there was any nefarious intent on either the county manager or myself. In fact, I brought this up at the last commission meeting that I was going to bring something forward. So my intent was certainly to give everyone as much heads up as possible, and I appreciate the work that the county manager is doing, and I understand that, putting together an agenda is very difficult without a policy as to where things fall. So I would certainly like to see us direct, hopefully, the county manager to put together some sort of policy as we move forward so we can expect certain types of certain types of agenda items in certain areas, so we all can feel comfortable, because I think we may disagree on a great deal of things, but we all disagree that not only our fellow commissioners, but the public should have as much access to whatever we're discussing with as much heads up as for it. Also, with the timeliness, I think that we were discussing, I think there was an issue about getting things on the agenda at the last minute, which I understand is problematic. So if we could have some agenda policy that, was put together, I think that would go ahead and put the county manager at ease, because I can imagine it's kind of stressful as he goes through this and dealing with his other responsibilities. So that would be my suggestion, is to have some sort of governing policy that we all could agree on, because I don't disagree. I think that this all financial stuff, I hope, especially if it was a cost, would not be on consent. But anyway, so that's my suggestion, is some sort of policy directive.
Commissioner Barfield.
Yeah, first, Commissioner Tabaya, I just want to make clear, I never thought that you ever slid something in on us. I just want to be clear, never thought that at all. In fact, I appreciate the heads up on this. Mr. Abate, one of the things I'd like to see is for the MIRA, when we get to this, let MIRA be able to go through the same negotiating as you're doing with the interlocals, for the interlocals. Because MIRA is building a plan on how they will be able to set a business plan tied to the plan we've approved and do the same type thing as the cities. And I'd like to see it from a management standpoint set up to do the same way. I'm really pushing to make sure we have a clear sunset time that's much, much sooner than what's projected. And based strictly on the projects and the work that has to be done, just like you do in business, you have a plan and you have a funded plan. So all those things are out there. And Commissioner Nardi, we can look at this too and look at if there's other ways, but I'd like to make sure we're, it's consistent across how other CRAs are run too, and so we can look at all of that, but it's not I just don't think in the governance side right now that should be done. We need to have time to look at it as we go through everything else. So I'll leave it at that.
Chair recognizes Commissioner Pritchett.
I was going to make the same request for the MIRA moving forward, so I think that's a good plan, also. I kind of, I saw it on consent agenda too, it kind of threw me for a little bit, but I'm still getting used to how we do it. We throw a lot of vitamins in there, a lot of items in there. So we pulled it and with discussion, so if we want to set a policy, we've got a lot of work to do on it, but it works. So either way we do it, I think I got comfortable with it after a while. So I really appreciate the fact that every member up here really does study through this agenda. I'm kind of amazed with you guys' ability to research everything by the time we get here. So,
Commissioner Nardi.
I was just going to say that most CRAs do have appointments from all the members, and at least that's from what I've seen, and that's the way we, did it in the cities. But in the cities, we obviously cover the entire area, so it's probably unique to each area. But that's something I'd like to look at, because again, I currently sit on the West Melbourne CRA, and their board is their council and mayor. So I realize they're a lot smaller, but thanks.
Well, the CRAs are a multifaceted group. No two are alike. Getting this whole thing to this point's almost been like herding cats. But I have to do another shout out here to the folks with the CRAs. They've gone out of their way to accommodate me and this board. They recognize that we need to get a handle on when they end, and so I'm just very, very proud of the way that all of the CRAs have handled this. I'm very proud of Mr. Abate and what he's done already with the negotiating, and I'm sure he'll go forward with negotiating with the MIRA board as well.
On that point, one of the words of wisdom I was given before I stepped into this role was to make sure that you receive board direction through motions in terms of actions that we move forward on. And so relative to that, on MIRA and how you want me to proceed, if the board would want to make a motion so that I could get board direction on it, we'll be happy to follow that direction.
Can we put that on agenda?
Sure. I would think that would be advisable.
You want that on a future agenda item?
For the next meeting? That would be advisable. Yep. Okay. Finally, public comments. Mr. Charles Tovey. You're all set.
Charles Tovey, 2555 Roberts Road, Melbourne, Florida. Before I get sidetracked, as I often do, and go back to the focus, I want to thank you, Commissioners Warfield and Smith, for your respect and your dignity towards me and as I act and behave in my disposition. Excuse me, there's no direction towards this commission or anybody. And the other thing is, have we considered Mr. Abate for the manager? He seems to be doing a good job and awfully knowledgeable about our system and things. I wanted to speak about my job and my opportunity. Corporate manager from Super Walmart called me, and he said, Mr. Tovey, we would like to advertise your business name 8 by 24 feet in every one of our Florida Super Walmart stores. 60,000 people a week in the store. Any way you want it, Mr. Tovey. Well, ma'am, I'm going to have to decline because I have a local government system. Anyways, if you could, I have her name and number if you want to call the corporate office of Super Walmart, and maybe you could hook up my lifetime opportunity. That's only one of the things. Aside from that, May is Environmental Month. It's in my book, and one of the months, but May is important, and if you haven't done your lagoon work yet, you only have a couple days. Rain season starts, and what are they going to do in the rain? I work rain, sleet, snow, hail, night, morning, day. It's not a 9-to-5 job for anybody, and I hope you're dedicated. Also, the Hawaiian word haole, I concur with that meaning and what it goes on around our community and our country. And if you're not local, then you really don't know. And the last month, Super Walmart. Oh yeah, the prevention. All these rules and regulations, and I appreciate the extra effort and the input that the new commissioners are putting in, but it's prevention, just like we never had to happen 9/11. And other people don't agree, and it puts people in inconvenience, but the overall outcome, you might not abuse it, but other people have, and given the opportunity, they will. And it's not that we don't trust you. It's that down the road, these things could occur, and an ounce of prevention, you know what it's worth. I'm running out of time, and I wish you all a good and safe Memorial Day, and all our officers and first responders, thank you, and I got a couple of seconds. Have a nice weekend, and happy Mother's Day. Happy you had one.
I have to recover a little bit from that. Moving on to public hearings. 4A.
4A is a petition and resolution to vacate a portion of a 200-foot wide public right-of-way of Deering Parkway. This is associated with the construction of Deering Parkway on the north side.
Let's see, 4A, we have a card on that. Mr. Storch, would you like to comment?
Yes, I appreciate that. For the record, my name is Glenn Storch, and this is a vacation of a certain portion of right-of-way in an area where we're now building an extension of Deering Parkway. The reason for this is because we have moved the right-of-way, and so we are now donating a large section of right-of-way to the north and then further to the west, and it leaves this area sort of like stranded. And so this is about a half an acre that would be vacated to allow the parcel to remain as a whole parcel, but the entire road is in the process. And in fact, you previously passed by consent your dedication agreement that indicates all the things we're required to do to construct this roadway. And so we're in process. In fact, I believe that we're ready to issue the permit as a result of the actions today, and that'll be going out to bid, and that road will begin beginning to construct. So thank you so much.
Comments, pleasure of the board.
I make a motion that we grant this petition.
We have a motion on the floor to grant.
Second for discussion. I just want to say thank you for bringing the project in, and we appreciate all your work, and it's going to be a great asset to our North County.
Hopefully to the entire county, but
Yeah.
and it's one step at a time.
I know it's undeveloped out there, and I just really appreciate your careful consideration of how you're doing it too, so thank you.
We have a motion on the floor to accept by Commissioner Barfield and a second by Commissioner Pritchett. Anyone wish to vote no? Passes 5-0. 4B.
4B is a petition to vacate a 12-foot wide public utility easement. This is between two lots in Barefoot Bay. We have not received any objections to this request.
Pleasure of the board.
I move to accept this petition to vacate.
We have a motion by Commissioner Barfield to accept this motion. Do we have a second?
A second.
Second by Commissioner Isnardi. Anyone wish to vote no? Passes 5-0.
4C is a petition to partially vacate a 6-foot wide public utility easement. This is to remove an encroachment for a pool tub. It's approximately 14 square foot of easement that would be vacated, and we've received no objections to this one.
I make a motion. I make a motion we approve petition.
Commissioner Barfield makes a motion to approve.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Pritchett. Anyone wish to vote no? Passes 5-0. 4D.
Mr. Chairman, this is the Project Marathon Economic Development Tax Exemption Ordinance that you asked to come back. Mr. Weiner's in the audience to provide answers to the questions you had last time.
Mr. Weiner?
Morning.
Morning.
I'm here for questions.
Does anyone have questions for Mr. Weiner? Mr. Tobias?
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Weiner, for showing up. My question would be, with something so monumental on last agendas for the EDC, why didn't you or anyone in your organization have the courtesy to show up?
I think monumental is a subjective description.
Okay, sorry, so you don't think this is monumental?
I think what's being requested here, monumental is a big word. Okay. Fact is that I can show you that the economic impact driven by the reduction in capital investment, moving from the construction of a building to basically renovating an existing building, has no economic impact in terms of the way we report it. And what I mean is that when we do economic impact using the in-plan model, you can account for construction impact. But since construction impact is not permanent jobs, we have never done that. So we reran the model the way with the same numbers with the economic impact, with the reduction in capital expenditure. The economic impact is the same thing. The number of jobs are the same. The wages are the same. So I think basically what we had was an address change that also involved, that was driven essentially by a change in the company's corporate plan. So, you know, it was an important change, but we didn't see the need. But we did see the need after it was discussed, and I'm here today.
Thank you. As we move forward, I would ask that you do the courtesy of, my understanding is you have a grant with us, and that you, part of that grant would be to at least show up to the meetings that you have an organization or a company that is moving forward. I think you'll see that we do our best to show up, and I certainly hope that you know you would do the same.
Well,
on a number of your studies, you point out the number of jobs that are created because of construction. So, and I've got a list of them here. My question is, construction is not, explain the difference why now that we take out construction not being important when you've cited it as ancillary job creation in other reports, why it's not important in this one.
Happy to do that, but to your last comment, EDC does show up. We generally
was there someone in the audience last time? Because there was no one in the audience, and we had to turn over to our county attorney to answer questions.
That is correct. The EDC has historically not shown up for every item that is on the agenda. It matters what the nature of the item is. That said, knowing that that is your desire, you can be sure that I will be here for every single meeting going forward. To answer your question, I did not say the construction impact was unimportant. It is transient in the sense that it's not permanent, but it is not accounted for by us ever because it's not permanent. Rather than me explain that, try and explain it, let me share with you copies of both economic impact analysis that show that what I'm talking about in terms of direct, indirect jobs and economic impact. Would that be okay?
Yeah, would this be done by the same software that said the apartment complex in Melbourne would create $1 billion, or would this be a different model that you would be using?
There are only two, to my knowledge, recognized models that the academic community, economic development community, governmental community can use that have any respect at all. One is the in-plan model, which we do use. We use it because it is much more powerful than we need for the kinds of things we normally engage in, and the other is REMI. So yes, it's the same model, but how you use the model's got a million variables. It can do incredibly complex things, which rarely does the EDC have to address. Normally what we're addressing are relatively simple things. We're identifying an industry sector, a level of capital investment, a level of new job creation, and the direct, indirect, and induced jobs that are created by that. Now, we could take it much further, but quite frankly, historically, many on the Commission and some in the press have wondered about the economic impact. So we've tried to be conservative in the way we do that. And so by ignoring what is essentially a temporary impact, which even I would say, I'm not saying it's unimportant, but it's something that could last for 6 months or 9 months. What the EDC is interested in is creating meaningful jobs over the long term. And that's what we continue to address. That said, if you would like us to adjust the model, which will show greater economic impact in the future, we are happy to do that.
No, I appreciate it. I just wanted to know if this was the same, one of the same models that said an apartment complex with a couple hundred units would create $1 billion of economic impact
Yes, sir,
for Melbourne.
But the model is a little bit like a wrench.
And you said there were a million.
You can use a wrench as a hammer, or you can use it as a wrench. I don't have, that modeling is not the same kind of modeling that we are doing on this project. And let me say this. Let's just take it to its most basic level. Let's forget the model. If you take the creation of 327 jobs, don't need a model for this, multiply it by an average wage of $64,356. The contribution to GDP is simply the sum of those two numbers. That's an annual contribution. That number is 25.1 million. Forget the indirect, the induced, forget the multiples, if that's what you care to do. That's a significant impact.
I appreciate it. My question was very simple. Was this the same model that said there would be $1 billion, and you said yes?
And
you said there were a million different variables.
Commissioner, my answer was more complete than that. Yes, it is the same model.
That's all.
But the
that was a yes or no.
outputs
Thank you.
are very dependent on how the model is used.
Yes, and you said there were a million different ways, and if you ever have one of those million ways where a apartment complex can create $1 billion, please share that with not only me, but with the rest of the Commission. My next question would be, based on the initial application, it said 27 new jobs would be created in 2016. I don't know the answer to this, and I posed this question to the county attorney, and he wasn't aware of that, and that's why, I asked that you would, show up and fulfill the role that you guys play. So I'm going to pose that to you. How many of the did they hit?
71, sir.
They created 71 jobs by 2016.
That's correct.
Thank you. Those are the only questions I have.
Any other questions for Mr. Weiner? Commissioner Pritchett, you have the floor.
Hi. Just since we're bringing this up as a discussion, most of the public isn't going to know what we're talking about. Could you tell the benefits of Project Marathon, just so that everybody watching on television can kind of know the economic benefits that's coming from a project?
Well, this particular one, in the most basic use of the model, which is to identify the industry sector, in-plan suggests a multiple without taking any of the frills. The projected impact, according to the model, is $52.8 million a year. So that's 327 direct jobs, which are very easy to reach out and touch. The model predicts 209 indirect and 161 induced. So it's significant. Even if you cut it in half, it's significant. They're high-tech jobs. They're involved in design. They're not manufacturing. They're sort of, engineering, design work. in the aerospace, but not always related to aerospace. It's sort of a, they're in the aerospace sector, but they're doing something unique that is, wouldn't, you know, it could be on your home TV as well. So they're doing some entertainment systems and some other things. So it's significant, and it was competitive. I mean, you know, we didn't get this whole project. Part of it did, in fact, go to Orlando, and we did our part to get the bigger piece of the pie. So,
I've just, our district, we fought for so long to get some jobs coming in because we didn't have them. And so we're still hungry for jobs. We're not out of the woods yet, or at least we're starting to have some opportunities come in. So I thank you for that. And on that, I'd like to make a motion to approve this.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Pritchett and a second by Commissioner Barfield to pass this resolution. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Passes 4-1.
thank you.
Commissioner Tobias being the nay vote. Moving on to 4E.
Good morning, Commission. This is the second reading of medical marijuana treatment center ordinance. At the first meeting on May 9th, the board decided to submit recommendations. Those recommendations have been consolidated on page 6 of your agenda package. There's a matrix there which has all of them identified. At this point, it appears in the legislative process, based on the recommendations that the board have presented, that they wish to go in a different direction. They wish to go in a more of a legislative, a business legislation. We've been presenting a zoning and land use ordinance through this process. So if the board chooses to go in a different direction, then we would need to change what we have presented, and it would have to come back to you all through a through legislative intent and first and second reading.
I have one speaker card. Cynthia Brewer. State your name and address, please.
Cynthia Brewer, 2337 Pizarro Lane, Melbourne, Florida, 32940. So I want to start by thanking all of you, not only for the opportunity to speak on this important topic for Florida, but also for choosing to educate yourselves on medicinal cannabis before making these tough decisions, and admitting that you may not know much about the industry, asking for information about the industry, or just allowing me to hound you at your office until you listen. So I don't think this journey has been easy for anyone. Leadership on a local level, myself, representatives in Tallahassee, but mostly for the patients of Florida who voted and asked for this medicine. But although difficult, I think that Brevard has set a standard for Florida. We did not sit idle. We could have shied away from the controversial, and it makes me very proud that we chose not to. I think that because you asked for the education and the information on this topic, that we could be a standard for Florida. I hope that if you do have legislative intent, instead of just the land use, and you have ideas or something all of a sudden came up that maybe made you change your mind, that you ask for any kind of information. There's people in our county that really know a lot about this, myself included, because this is all I get to do all day. And I know that you have very busy schedules, but I would be happy to help. And I look forward to seeing these ordinances that come out. Thank you.
Commissioner Isnardi.
Yes, I would have added this to the agenda, but, you know, you know how much it drives me crazy when people add things on at the last minute, and I wanted to make sure I had a good, clean copy of this ordinance. Palm Bay recently went through this process, so, I mean, rather than hound their staff over there, I just pulled it straight off their agenda. And they have a lot of really great things in here, I think, that include most of what, just looking through, especially like District 2 Commissioner Barfield, he had a lot of the whereas clauses that are in this. And this ordinance, I believe, was taken from one that we were going to actually look at before. I like this ordinance a lot. Obviously, it would have to be modified to what
The Palm Bay ordinance.
the Palm Bay ordinance, because it was vetted by their team of attorneys as well. So we have another set of eyes of experts on it to make sure that it's a solid piece of legal material. I think it protects the industry as well as protects us. It's a good compromise. Obviously, we can add, there's some things in the existing proposed ordinance where we talk about signage, where we talk about operation hours, that sort of thing, that I'm not opposed to adding to that ordinance. But I think it clearly identifies definitions that are currently used at the state level. So obviously, parking and traffic and site design, there's a little more detail in hours. But I think that, combining the two may be the best option. I hate to make a really long piece of legislation, but I think that we have to make sure that not only are we protected, not only are we finding that balance between protecting the industry, I most importantly want to make sure that we don't miss anything. And I know we can always modify this later, but I liked it because it included Mr. Tobias' suggestion that we have some sort of ranking, because that was my number one fear, is that we would have people come in and be qualified and approved people applying for these permits, and we would have to decide based on, who looks better, essentially, if they're in legal location as to what we're permitting as far as zoning goes, that we're left to decide on who is better qualified. This scoring system sort of takes away from that. It sort of, it makes it a fair playing field. And the criteria is very black and white. We don't want a failing company to come in. We want a company who either has a history or that's ranked, say, higher on the scale if they've got, previous experience. I don't want a bunch opening and closing and businesses that will be failing. I'd rather us put, because they're going to come, so we might as well make sure that we have ones that will be successful and ones that have done this before. And I think that those are the applicants that we'll see, and those are the applicants that will rise to the top. I'm on a timer. No, that's funny. Those are the applicants that will rise to the top as far as the point system goes. I don't know anybody that has. I have no vested interest in this, obviously. I just want to make sure that we cross all our T's and dot our I's. And like I said, there's things in our current proposed ordinance, I think, that are good, that we could include in that. I'm not opposed to doing that. I just like this ordinance that Palm Bay just recently passed because it's very clean, and it has the indemnity clause, and there's a lot of things in it that are very good. And I like the idea of having an authority that reviews these, that ranks these, because I think that we need to have representatives, not just from the public, but I like Palm Bay's idea where they have a physician on the board. And obviously, the authority would have no authority beyond normal board authority. It would ultimately come back to us, but I like the idea of there being oversight. And they did a 5-member board. I believe someone had talked about a 4-member board. The original ordinance that I had seen, I had 3, I believe, but I like the idea of at least 5 members. I'd like a member of the disabled community on there, and that's not in Palm Bay's ordinance. I think that there's so much work that still needs to be done, and maybe I'm just muddying it up worse, but I don't want us to jump in. I think our ordinance is too basic, is what it boils down to. I think this covers a lot more, and this clearly identifies the definitions and indemnity clause and scoring system, and it takes us out of having to pick who makes it through the permitting process faster. And if we're stuck with, again, like what we talked about last time, having 2 done at the same time, we're not left with saying, well, we think you might be more successful, because I think we put ourselves at risk legally if we do that for litigation.
Any other comments by the board? Thoughts?
I apologize if I babbled. There's just a lot to this.
Mr. Tobias?
So is this let me see if I understand it. And I just got this. I probably should have done my due diligence and pulled this off of the Palm Bay website, but this is 18 pages here. would it be your suggestion then to table what we have right now and use the Palm Bay ordinance as the baseline and then incorporate many of the suggestions that our office has sent out into the Palm Bay ordinance and then bring it up for discussion, at our next meeting? Is that the direction or the intent with providing us with this Palm Bay ordinance?
That's what I would like to do, again, only because as much as I hate really long ordinances, this is a really important one. And I think that where we have some additional things in here that are very important, we talk about, signage, and we talk about, obviously, location and zoning and hours of operation and permissible activities on and around. I'm okay with including all that. There's nothing really in the county ordinance that I don't like. I just want a more clear, solid ordinance, and I think that this longer version has that. It clearly identifies that. It also includes the authority, and it includes the makeup of that authority, which is something I like. I don't like the idea of delaying this, but I wanted, again, and I apologize for not bringing this sooner. I wanted my time with it enough to do my research and ask the questions before I just said, okay, guys, this is my idea. Because again, like I said, I like what the county has to offer here. I just think that this model ordinance from Palm Bay, with our additions, would be a better way to go. And obviously, with what we have, I think there was only a couple of differences in between District 1. I believe Commissioner Pritchett wanted to. Well, I think we already established that, didn't we? 1,000 feet from residential, or did we say 500 from the last meeting? There may be only a few discrepancies, but that's something we could bring in for discussion, too.
Yeah. That's the distances and stuff, I think that's easily.
That's minor.
That's not a killer. My biggest concern when I was, because I looked at a model ordinance before this one, is I didn't want to I was going to say bureaucratic, but I can't get rid of it. I just say it's too bureaucratic, I was concerned. Too many different evaluations and reviews when you go through a complete scoring process. So I just propose that we have a committee, or whatever you want to call them, that I think this one said a doctor and a few different people to review it all first and then bring it to the county commission to make that decision. But I didn't go into all the scoring because I thought that was kind of overkill, but I'm okay relooking at all that. I really am. I'm not locked into any of this. We always have to do our own thing because of sunshine and throw it in. I think a lot of this, I don't think we're that far away from it, actually.
Right. And I'm not so rigid with the scoring either, and I get that, but I think that with that oversight board, with the experts and with residents, with input from all, and then they're able to say, this is why, we believe, because they're going to come at the same time. I mean, I have no doubt about that at all. And chances are legislation, I don't know how fast, but will change to include a broader scope of patients with those sort of needs. And that's going to happen too, which may change ultimately our ratio on what we'll allow. But
my biggest concern about all of this, because like it or not, eventually recreational marijuana is probably going to come in. And this sets the basis of where that can be distributed from. And so that's why I think it's very important we put as much clarity in as we can on this. And I agree with what you're saying. I would like to look at this a little bit more, but just looking at it, I don't think we're very far away at all, really.
Any other thoughts? Well, we're not under any time constraints, and I like this proposal. I looked it over a little bit, actually a lot more than a little bit. I think this is more business-oriented, creates more competition. That's really what I'm looking for. I don't want it to be over-regulated by bureaucrats. I like the competitive edge that's given to this with our oversight. So I think that you guys, we need to give staff direction, and we can fill in the blanks, we can look this over, and we can come up with our ideas and give staff that information the next week or two.
it may be direct the county attorney's office to include the things that we have in this ordinance as it sits, and if we want to change what's been proposed, we can always change it, because, you know, some of its language, some of it will plug right in, and some of it will have to be added. Again, like the operations, the hours, the signage, the parking and traffic, the prohibited activities and stuff. I don't have a problem if that gets added in here, at least as far, I'm not saying it's my ordinance, but what I'm saying is I don't have a problem if we just add those things in there and then we can mull through them.
Well, I think the best
As
thing
one
for us to
piece.
do is to, each one of us, look at what you've proposed, add or subtract anything that we think that should be added or subtracted, and bring it back to make sure that staff has that information, and then we can go forward from there, and they can put it together in some form for us to look at in our first meeting in July. Would that work for you guys?
I believe so. I don't know if Scott wants to weigh in on that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Mr.
I've been
Knox?
with Palm Bay ordinance that needs some fixing, so we will work on that at your instruction. I think fundamentally, there's a different approach in Palm Bay than there is in the county ordinance. The county ordinance had a conditional use permit which required 2 public hearings and approval of a conditional use, which allows conditions to be imposed too. That is not in the Palm Bay ordinance. So if you want to go in a direction where you have a group that reviews these things independently without any public input, that's not the way you want to go with the conditional use thing.
Right.
If you want to combine the two so that you have a business regulation, which is what this ordinance is about, and then a locational ordinance, which would be the conditional use, that's fine too. I mean, just tell us what you want to do. And I would recommend that once you tell us what that direction is, we've got a lot of input from all 5 of you so far. And anybody wants to add more, that's fine too. But we would come back with some kind of proposal next time we see you, as opposed to actually trying to go through another proposal section.
I personally like the conditional use. It gives us an added set of eyes on where these things are going to go.
Okay, well, okay, that's fine. You guys tell us what you want. We'll
Well,
put it
I would
together.
suggest that we do the same thing we did last time. We can look these over, we can add or subtract whatever we think would be pertinent, and then get it to you, and you guys can come back to us at the first meeting in July with a consensus, and then we can start taking it apart. Does that work?
Whatever you want to do is fine.
Okay. You guys good with that?
Question.
Mr. Tobias?
Would that count as a second hearing, or that we would have to start all over
Yeah,
again?
you can start again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So if I may, just, the board would be looking for the new legislative intent and permission to advertise at the first meeting in July with the new ordinance, with the recommendations that you're going to be presenting to us.
Correct.
At that meeting? Okay.
I have just some minor.
Mr. Barfield?
Can we get this somehow in Word format? I think it's PDF, and if we can
Yeah,
get
I
that.
can ask for it.
Yeah, I guess send it, can you send it out to us, or?
Yeah, I can ask for it.
Commissioner Pritchett?
I like the Palm Bay's ordinance too, but I would like, Mr. Knox, would you say that again? There's a way that we can combine the CUP with the board?
Yeah, there's a way to combine it.
That would be something I would like to see with staff moving forward. And I think if we've got an idea, we should tell them kind of now, because we're only getting 3 districts many times, or 4, putting in the information so that we can come back with some ideas, so that next time we're kind of ready to roll forward a little bit better. But I think I'm not having any problems with any of these at this point. I think we're doing pretty good, so.
You good? Okay. Moving right along. Unfinished business. I'm going to move we're going to move to 6A1 first, and then we'll come back to 5A.
Commissioners, this item 6A1 is the results of the efforts that we've been undertaking with the Florida East Coast Railway to obtain an aerial easement over their railroad tracks at the Pineda Causeway Extension overpass location. If you recall, we had kind of abruptly became aware of the need for the aerial easement, and we've been working as quickly as we could to resolve it so we could keep the project moving forward. We now have the contract in its finished form before the board, and the amount of the cost was $245,000, and we believe that this is ready to go, and it has not been signed by FEC as yet. They will consider that basically during your break in June, and it would theoretically be returned to us as soon as they get it executed.
Comments from the board? Pleasure of the board.
I make a motion, we approve it with, I guess, option one. Number one, accept the counteroffer and authorize the chairman to execute the purchase agreement.
We have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Barfield to accept option one.
Second.
We have a second by Commissioner Isnardi. Any further discussion? All those in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Okay, now we'll go back to 5A.
Commissioners, this is the item which had been brought before you 2 times previously, and we were waiting for the FEC situation to be resolved, and we don't have any problems with this agreement as it is currently exists.
Pleasure of the board.
I move to approve.
We have a motion to approve by Commissioner Pritchett,
Second.
second by Commissioner Isnardi. Any discussion?
Have discussion.
Mr. Barfield?
I'd like to put a condition on that, based on the FEC signing the purchase agreement on 6A1.
Is that acceptable?
Can I ask the lawyer real quick something?
Sure.
Okay. Is this doing any kind of damage to Pine Street right now, holding out for the other causeway? Are you okay with a little hesitation here still for a few more weeks?
Only because we know FEC will sign the agreement, so
Okay.
that would be
I
fine,
know.
but
Okay. Then,
of course, we'd like an approval, but just conditioning on that would be
yeah,
fine.
just to respect the other commissioners, I don't really see the connection here after a lot of conversation, but if you're good with that and it makes the fellow commissioners up here more comfortable, I'll go ahead and add in that condition, sir.
Tammy, you have that? Okay. Okay, any more discussion? Okay, we have a motion on the floor by, you made the motion, correct?
Yes. Does your
Commissioner,
second hold?
Commissioner Pritchett, and second by Commissioner Isnardi. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Thank you, commissioners, very much.
6A2.
Yes, Commissioners, this item is asking you to authorize the chairman to execute interlocal agreements with municipalities using the template that's attached to this agenda item to provide cost share from the Indian River Lagoon Trust Fund for projects that were approved by you on March 7th in the 2017 supplement to the Save Our Indian River Lagoon plan, or in the original project plan adopted by the Commission in August of last year. You previously approved the first of these contracts at your last meeting. That one was specifically for the Rockledge Breeze Swept project. We're getting the scopes of work and the eligibility calculations in from all the cities now, and we would like to be able to move forward with all those contracts during your summer break, so this would allow us to do that.
Comments from the board? Hearing none. Do we have a motion to accept?
Motion to accept?
We have a motion to accept by Commissioner Pritchett. Second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Barfield. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. 6B1.
Morning, Commissioners. Item 6B1 is our demolition policy. You have not seen this before, so this is under new business for you. We, with discussions from HUD, they have made a strong recommendation that we change our policy to include the provision of liens for that program. Our demolition policy is unlike, our program is unlike any of our others. It's actually not based on income. It's actually based on the condition of the property itself. So that being said, it can serve pretty much anyone at any income level. HUD's comments had to do with the fact that the property owner was getting a benefit and there was a need to protect that benefit. So what this policy change does is allow the department to put liens in place for those who are at under 80% of area median income, which is about $48,500 for a family of 4. It would be what's called a 5-year forgivable lien, which would forgive at 20% per year. For those above 80%, it would be a 5-year deferred lien, and it would be then satisfied at the end of 5 years.
Pleasure of the board.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve by Commissioner Pritchett, second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Isnardi. Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. 6C1.
Commissioners, this is a request for the board to allow the county manager to negotiate the terms and conditions for a lease agreement. For Commissioner Tobias' office, there is a brief staff report there. We've done due diligence, we believe, in looking at alternatives, and I believe Commissioner Tobias is happy with the proposed move that we'd be able to do under this agreement, so we're seeking the board's approval to move forward.
Comments from the board?
I move to approve.
Second. We have a motion by Commissioner Pritchett and a second by Commissioner Barfield to approve this. Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. County Attorney.
Mr. Chairman, the next two items that both involve appointment of Mr. Denninghoff as the expert witness who will be binding the county on engineering decisions made during trial or as part of the litigation process involving eminent domain cases on Barnes 2. This is a standard procedure we go through because the law allows him to make commitments that on areas like access, for example, during trial, which may come up that we don't know about right now.
Pleasure of the board.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Isnardi. Second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Barfield. Anyone wish to oppose? Passes 5-0.
And D2 is the same thing for St. John's Heritage Parkway.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Isnardi.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Barfield. Anyone wish to oppose? Passes 5-0. D3.
D3 is a little odd in the sense it's a request to publish legislative intent and permission to advertise an ordinance that doesn't exist yet because the legislature passed a new bill allowing for wireless companies to place wireless devices on poles and various other portions of rights-of-way. They set forth some very strict requirements in terms of what the county can and cannot regulate. And we need to prepare that ordinance, but the reason we need to do that now and get the permission now to advertise is because the legislation goes into effect on July 1st. Applicants can start beginning to ask for wireless devices as of that date. And we have 3 months from the date that the first application comes in to get the application approved. And if you don't have an ordinance in place, you don't have any say over it.
So you're recommending that we pass this as a proactive
Yeah,
measure?
just to get it on the, you'll be seeing it again in the first meeting in July.
Okay.
And it'll be, I think that's July 10th. So it'll be nine days after the legislation goes into effect, and any wireless applications that come in will be subject to that ordinance.
Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Commissioner Barfield proposes accepting this. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Pritchett. Anyone wish to vote no? Passes 5-0. And having no public comments, we'll move into board reports. Mr. Abate?
No reports.
Mr. Knox?
No report, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Barfield?
No report.
Mr. Tabaya?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll be brief. There was a little a tableau that happened at our last workshop, and normally I don't bring this stuff up, but I think it was quite callous. And I feel, though I didn't say it, I need to apologize on behalf of the board. The comment was made that if anyone earns under $16 or $18 an hour, they cannot be considered a professional. And Mr. Visco provided the information, and apparently just over 1/3 of our county employees make under $16 an hour. These are hardworking men and women, firefighters, support staff, janitorial staff. I consider these people professionals, and I think hopefully it was a misstatement, and hopefully we move forward with more respect. I just want to make sure and thank all the people that work out there, regardless of the amount of money they make. I certainly, and I believe most of this board certainly believes that these people are good, hardworking professionals. So that's my report, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Isnardi?
No report.
Commissioner Pritchett?
Yeah, I have a request to throw out. We had moved the night meetings to 6 o'clock, and I was just going to ask for recommendation, ask to consideration if we could move them to 5 o'clock so they're the same time as our zone meetings. We'd have a little more consistency. It would move them back an hour. I think it would be easier on everybody, and we could get through a lot of the pre-stuff by the time that the community would be able to be here to show up anyways. I think it'd be easier on the board all around. So I'd like to make a motion to move the meeting to 5.
We have a motion on the floor to move our first meeting of the month to 5. Commissioner Isnardi?
The reason why I suggested 6, and many municipalities are 6 or 7 at night, is because I wanted to give people a chance to get here, 'cause especially if people want to come, or if they do have an item for presentation. So, I mean, I would prefer that we stay at 6 to ensure, and plus people, you're able to beat a little bit of that rush hour traffic. So I'm happy with them at 6 o'clock, but, I mean, if the commission desires to move them, that's fine, too.
Well, if we have our druthers, I'd rather have it at 9 o'clock on Tuesday morning. It doesn't put any time constraints on us, and I haven't seen any change in size of crowds, evening or otherwise. And my quotient for people's about full by 5 o'clock in the afternoon, so I want to go home at 5 o'clock, and instead of going home, like I think most people would rather go home, I'm tasked with having to be here for another 2 or 3 or 4 hours as a member of the board. 9 o'clock in the morning, you're fresher, you're brighter, it's the beginning of the day, you get all the required things out of the way, and there have been occasions when I would attend or would like to attend meetings, other meetings like Satellite Beach in Melbourne. I can't because their meetings are the same time our meetings are. So I would prefer having it 9 o'clock on Tuesday mornings if we're going to change it at all. That's my 2 cents worth. Any other comments?
I don't know. I don't know if my motion's getting a second or if it's Diane or...
It hasn't gotten a second yet. Mr. Barfield?
Yeah, I'm with Commissioner Smith. It seems like every homeowner association has a meeting on the first night on Tuesdays. And so I'm getting accused of avoiding the homeowners association meetings. I won't go on record, that's not true. But I'm okay with turning it to 5, but I think we need to monitor it carefully and see if at some point, if we want to do this, do it every other month or something else. Because we can always do, if we do it at 5 o'clock, you can always do a time certain for people that have certain things. So I'll second your motion.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Snarty?
I would just say that I had more people thank me for moving one of the meetings to the evening because they appreciated the option of being able to come. So, and whether or not they show up is another story, but I've had more people complain to me in the past, and I've heard more people complain that why are your meetings during the day when everybody's at work? Because when they do want to be here, they want to be here, and they can't be here if they're working, because most of us do work during the day.
Yeah, I know. People are very vocal about things that they don't like, and meeting times is one of them, and I've heard pros and cons. I'll relate one. A club that I used to belong to, we had a member that complained all the time that our meetings started at 7 o'clock at night, and that he would come more often if we started at 5:30. Well, we did change it to 5:30. For the record, he never came. He never came once at 5:30. So people have their opinions, but whether that equates to action or not, that's something else altogether. Any other comments?
Just a quick question. How would this impact public transportation? Do we have public transportation that arrives here so folks can get here, and would that change that availability for people to come if we were to switch it to 5 o'clock?
I have no idea. Jim's not here.
With the 154,000 critical need that was passed last year, we were able to extend hours of operation out here until 7 p.m. So the last pickup is 7 p.m. out here. That's the last transfer, I believe.
It would be easier.
But that wouldn't allow people to get home if they were here past that time.
Thank you.
So another reason for it to be 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm not giving up, even though we have a motion and a second. Okay, we have a motion and a second for moving the meetings from 6, the first meeting of the month on the Tuesday, first Tuesday of the month, and it would be moving it from 6 to 5 p.m. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Fails. 3-2. The two, what do you want to know? Who?
Nays were Commissioner Tobias.
Yeah, Commissioners Tobias, Smith, and Isnardi. Okay, and I have no board reports, so this meeting is adjourned.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.